Okay. So we are now in Tanya chapter 9. In chapter 9, we finally get to the struggle, the fight between the animal soul and the godly soul. After we describe what the godly soul is and what the animal soul is. So we just briefly review who are the actors, who is the godly soul and who is the animal soul. Right, the godly soul is chapter 2, 3, 4, and 5. Right, chapter 2 was the godly soul's godly DNA. It's a godly spark. It's a part of Hashem no matter what type of person you are. Chapter 3 is the personality, which is the mind and the heart. Chapter 4 is the clothing, thought, speech, and action of mitzvahs. And chapter 5 is the food, understanding Torah, taking it into one's mind and heart. And then came chapter 6, 7, and 8, and there we describe the animal soul. And the animal soul, we said, was a soul of klipa. What's klipa? We explained. Kedusha, holiness, is that which is selfless and surrendered to Hashem. So klipa is the opposite, that which thinks about itself. And that's the essence of the animal soul. It's a selfish being and thinks about itself. And we talked about different ways you can be selfish. You can just be selfish because you need to survive. That's why you're eating, sleeping, drinking, and doing everything else. Or you can be selfish, overly extra selfish because you want to indulge. Then you added klipa, you added extra selfishness, so it went down. Or you can add a layer of selflessness to your eating. I'm eating because I'm hungry, yes. But I'm also eating because I need to be healthy so I can serve Hashem later.
So like a king.
Sorry?
So kings, they were more klipa ones.
Oh, what?
Kings.
Kings.
They only eat, they haven't.
I didn't hear the word you said, kings?
Yeah, kings.
Oh, king can be both ways. A king could be very selfish. Right, for example, the Torah says that a king shouldn't have too many horses. Shouldn't be, because he has so much at his disposal, he can be extra selfish. Or what he really should be, a king should really be a selfless Hashem. He's a servant of Hashem to serve the people. So a king can go both ways. Right? Okay, and now we get chapter 9 is the actual struggle between the godly soul and animal soul. So what do they each want? So the Alter Rebbe uses an example, and he says we should think of our body as a city. It's a city. And the godly soul and the animal soul are two kings fighting for control of the city. Now when two kings are fighting for the control of the city, it's not as if...
City or country?
A city or country doesn't make a difference. Let's just say it's a city. That's the example Alter Rebbe gives. Now each king who's fighting for control of the city is not going to say, I'll take all of the city, but I'm going to let the other king run the parks and recreation department. No king's going to do that. If I'm taking control of the city, I control the city, top to bottom, everything. And if the other king is going to take it, the other king says, I want control over everything. And the same thing is true of the godly soul and the animal soul. Each one wants full control over my body. What does it mean, control over my body? It means every thought, every speech, and every action. What does the godly soul want? That every single thought I have, every single word I speak, and every act I do is purely for the purpose of serving Hashem. That's what the godly soul wants. Full, complete control, not allowing the animal soul any selfishness whatsoever. If the godly soul had its way, that's what it would do. Every single thing I thought, spoke, or did would be for nothing other than the service of Hashem. If the godly soul had its way. Not only does the godly soul want to control every word, every thought, and every action, but the godly soul wants that I should feel such an intense love for Hashem that I don't even feel a desire for the world around me. Not only does it want to control my thought, speech, and action, the clothing, it also wants to control my internal experience, my feelings. It wants the feeling for Hashem to be so intense that I don't care for anything else. Not only does it want my feelings to be so intense for Hashem that I don't care for anything else, but it actually wants that my animal soul should see the beauty of serving Hashem, and my animal soul should also burn with a love for Hashem. That's what the godly soul would want. Just like a king conquering the city doesn't just want control of the city, but it wants the other king to recognize his control, and wants the other king to say, yes, when it comes to the city, I do what you want, and I want you to be successful in your city. So the godly soul wants the animal soul, which is selfish, to say, you know something, godly soul? You're right. The best thing is to serve Hashem. I want to serve Hashem too. That's how far the godly soul is hoping to dominate my experience. Every thought, every word, every action for Hashem. My feeling should be so intense for Hashem that I don't feel and care for anything else. And my understanding and appreciation of serving Hashem should be so deep that even my animal soul says, you know something? I want to join that too. I also want to serve Hashem. That's what the godly soul wants. What does the animal soul want? The exact opposite. It wants every word, every thought, and every action to be for selfish. Even if it isn't sin necessarily that it wants. But it wants every word that you speak should be for your own personal gain. Every thought you have should be for your personal enjoyment or your personal gain. And every act you take should be personal enjoyment or personal gain. Right? Pursue pleasure and avoid pain. That's all the animal soul wants. And it doesn't want any little drop of selflessness. The animal soul is all about the self. Why would it want to give up even one thought of thinking for somebody else or thinking for Hashem? It should all be for me. All be selfish. And this is the internal struggle we go through in life all the time. On the one hand, we have this part of us that really wants just be me and joy. And this other part of me that just wants to be serve Hashem, because this is the truth. And sometimes I feel this way, and sometimes I feel that way. Right? This gets back to something we talked about in chapter 1 a little bit, that it explains why sometimes we have such opposite feelings to the point that we feel like hypocrites. Right? On Yom Kippur, at the end of Yom Kippur by Ne'ilah, this happens to almost everybody. While you're in Ne'ilah, you're in that moment. Right? You're praying, the Aron Kodesh is open. Right? At the end of Yom Kippur, Ne'ilah, the highest point of Yom Kippur, the idea of thinking about eating for myself is out of the question. I'm standing in front of Hashem, the Aron Kodesh is open, it's Yom Kippur, we're about to blow the shofar at the end of Yom Kippur. I mean, we scream Shema Yisrael, we scream Baruch Shem 3 times, and then we scream Hashem Holakim 7 times, right? It's a very intense moment. And in that moment, you really feel like there's nothing else but just serving Hashem. 5 minutes later, the fast is over, and everybody's running to get food. So how did we get to such extremes?
Because you haven't eaten the whole time.
But 5 minutes ago, you weren't thinking about eating. 5 minutes ago, you were thinking about just serving Hashem. Because you have a godly soul and an animal soul. And when you're standing in Yom Kippur, in that moment, your godly soul's on fire. And that's what you're thinking about. That's what you're speaking. That's what you're feeling. And then 5 minutes later, the animal soul is activated. And now I'm driven by, I'm hungry, I got to run to that table, get the good Danish, get the juice, get the water, whatever it is.
That's good to do before.
You're supposed to do Arvit before. So it's not 5 minutes later, it's 15 minutes later. But it's pretty quick how you go from one extreme to the other. Thinking about just Hashem, and all of a sudden I'm thinking just about myself. So some people feel like they're a hypocrite. And they feel like the feelings they felt in Yom Kippur wasn't real. You know why it's not real? Because look, 10 minutes later I want to think about myself. So it says that, but it's not true. It is a real feeling. That was a real feeling of the godly soul. And this is a real feeling of the animal soul. They're two separate souls feeling two separate things. Don't feel like it was a waste of time in Yom Kippur because all of a sudden the animal soul is activated. And the same thing really happens every day. A person can be in the morning and he's in the mood and he's praying and he's really into it and he feels like this is it. And then when prayer is over, he goes about his day. He goes back to thinking about himself and all the feelings he had during prayer are like gone. So does that mean his prayer wasn't real? His prayer was very real. That was his godly soul praying. But then later the animal soul kicks in. And this is the battle, the struggle we go through in life. Going back and forth between feeling of all I want to do is serve Hashem to feelings of all I want to do is take care of myself and enjoy life. And this is the battle we're going through inside of our minds between the godly soul and the animal soul. Clear? Okay. Now, the godly soul is understood. Why does it want every single part of me to serve Hashem? Because it's a part of Hashem. It is, like we said in chapter 2, the godly soul is a part of Hashem. So if it's a part of Hashem, all it wants to do is be connected to Hashem. What about the animal soul? Why is it so selfish? Why does it want to be like this? Why does it all it want? Just me. What's the point? Where does this come from? Right? The animal soul is also created by God. It's also created by Hashem. Even Klippa, like we learned in yesterday, is also created by Hashem. The divine energy is very concealed and very hidden. It's deep down, but it's still created by Hashem. So what's its purpose? Why is the animal soul so aggressive in wanting self, self, me, me, me? What's the point? So the Alter Rebbe tells us something the Zohar says. The Zohar says like this: an example of a king who has a prince, child, and he wants to prove that his son is a strong charactered person.
So you become the next king, right?
Yeah, he wants the son to be the next king, right? He wants to prove that his son is a strong person and his son is a man of integrity. You know what integrity means? Yeah. So what does the king do? The king hires somebody to try to convince the prince to do the worst thing possible, and makes it very enjoyable, very pleasurable. The son doesn't know about this. And all of a sudden, someone walks into the son's life and starts to try to convince the kid, the son, to do all kinds of terrible things. Right? So the son doesn't know what the plan is. Right?
Yeah.
But the person hired to convince the son to do terrible stuff, does that person know what the plan is?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That person was hired. So when this person who's trying to convince the prince to do bad things, what's he thinking? He's really trying really hard to make make the prince do bad things. But does he want the prince to actually do the bad things? No. The prince is hoping, this person that the king hired is hoping the prince is going to say no.
The king is hoping.
And the king is hoping the prince is going to say no. So even while this person is trying to convince the prince to do bad things, in the same moment, the prince and this person who's hired in the back of his head is thinking, please, prince, don't fall for me.
Maybe.
Right?
I don't think so.
But that's his job. In other words, the job is to work as hard as he can to convince the prince to do bad things. But really, this person is working for the king. This person wants the king to be happy. And the king is only going to be happy if the prince says no.
It's like you see the angel of death likes to kill people. It's not really.
It's his job. Really, this person who's hired by the king wants the prince to say no. But because this person's job is to convince the prince to try to do bad things, that's what he's going to do. And he's going to work very hard to try to do that to the prince, but hoping in the back of his head, I hope the prince says no to me. And that, says the Alter Rebbe based on the Zohar, is exactly what the animal soul is doing. The animal soul is hired by the king, hired by Hashem. And it's hired by Hashem to prove that Hashem's children, the Jewish people, are strong character people. And therefore, the animal soul, your Yetzer Hara, which is inside of you trying to convince you to do bad things, is really actually hoping you're going to say no. And when you give in to your Yetzer Hara, when you give in and you do something bad, chas v'shalom, you know what the Yetzer Hara says? Come on, you fell for me again? You were supposed to get over this. My whole job is to make you work hard so you can prove how strong you are. And now you gave in to a stupid little Avera. Come on. That's what the Yetzer Hara says.
Why did you try so hard? You did one.
That's his job. Just like the person who was hired by the king, the job is to work as hard as he can to make the prince do bad things. So the Yetzer Hara, the animal soul, is working as hard as it possibly can to get you to do bad things. But in the back of his head is hoping, please don't fall for me. Isn't that an amazing way of thinking about it? When you think about it that way, it's much easier to overcome your Yetzer Hara because you know what he's all about. So every time the thought comes into your head, maybe you should do something bad, you look at that thought and you say, I know why you're here. You're here, so I should say no. Okay, so I'm going to say no. Once you know this trick, once you know the whole plan, it makes it easy to overcome the Yetzer Hara. You follow what I'm saying? It's an amazing way to think about the Yetzer Hara. Okay, ask your question, and I want to make another point about this.
You're saying the animal soul is selfish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Only thinks about yourself, and the godly soul is not selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a woman who gives birth, let's say, and has a kid,
Mm-hmm.
she's doing everything for the kid.
Yeah.
The dad is working everything for the kid.
Yeah.
Second, which soul is that?
So a parent who's working hard to make sure their kids are successful, is that godly soul or animal soul? Well, it depends. Why do they want their kids to be successful? If it's simply because they are human beings and they want humanity and their family line to continue, then it's the animal soul. But if they're doing this because Hashem wants Jewish children, and Hashem wants Jewish children to serve Him, then it's a godly soul. It's the same question about, why do people have children? Why do people have children at all?
It's the first mitzvah.
So if the answer is because it's a mitzvah from Hashem, Hashem wants children in the world, then it's godly soul. If the answer is, what do you mean I want to have children? Because I want to have children, then it's animal soul. Right? So it's everything. It's the same thing's true here.
But a mom who takes care of her kid when she's a baby, changing the diaper, she's not doing it for the kid's future, she's doing it for him now.
It depends. There's a lot of layers of thought going into a parent's mind when they're educating their children, right? So you have to try to make the selfless part of the thoughts to be most dominant.
What is it? What's the first year of a baby's life? No matter what you do.
The baby or the parents?
The first year of a baby's life.
Yeah.
Let's say your firstborn baby, first baby, first year of his life. I don't think you're trying to teach him manners when he kind of.
No, but you're trying. Yeah, that's true. But you're trying to, even when you're taking care of your children as a very, very young age, as babies, you're changing diapers and you're feeding them, right? It's part of your overall plan in life to raise children, right?
Yeah.
And that overall plan to raise children, what's it predicated on? What's it based on? What's the reasons that I'm doing that? And there's the question if it's animal soul or godly soul, probably a mix of the two.
Like you said, with the prayer in the morning, I do a very, very important prayer, and then after I listen to my animal soul. So I would like.
That's what I'm saying. It's the same thing is true of raising children. It's all the same thing.
What is it the first year? Your animal soul?
It's a mix. It depends on what you're thinking. It's just like everything else in life. It's a mix of both. It depends what you're thinking. Partially, I'm a human being, and as a human being, I want to have children that are going to grow up and continue my family. Yeah. But if I dig a little deeper, and I think to myself, what's the real reason I should be having children and raising them? It's because that's what Hashem wants. Right? And it's the same thing. It's the same struggle. Okay, so I want to add one more thing, which Alter doesn't say in the chapter, but this is something that explains based on this chapter. It's a very, very beautiful idea. There's a funny, interesting thing. A person sometimes can plan for months and months to do a certain Aveda. They think in their mind, that's going to be very fun. Whatever the Aveda is. And they're thinking about it, should I do it, not do it? They're a little scared. Right? And then finally the person says, you know what? I'm going to do it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then it comes to finally the time, and they do it. They do the Aveda. And then when they're done, what do they feel? What a waste of time. It was such a silly idea. I sat there and spent months and months and months working myself up for that stupid 4 minutes of pleasure, 10 minutes of pleasure, whatever it is. What a wasted, silly thing. Right? Now think of the other way around. You're going down the street, it's Sukkot, let's say, and you stop someone on the street. This is an experience I've had many times. And you say, come, do you want to shake lulav and etrog? And the person looking at you says, I'm not interested, Rabbi, I'm not religious, leave me alone. And then I say, come on, it's going to take 10 seconds. Just take it, make a blessing, shake it, and you can go about your day. Just do it. It takes 10 seconds, right? And the person says yes. Why is the person saying yes to me? Well, at least what do they think there's? Because they want to get rid of me. I'm nudging them, so they want to get rid of me. So they say, I figure they'll take 10 seconds, shake it, and I'll leave them alone. And then they shake the lulav and etrog. And you know what they tell me? Oh, Rabbi, that was great. I really needed that. So here's a guy planning months and months to do a sin, and when he's done, says, oh my gosh, what a waste of time. And here's another person who did not plan to do a mitzvah, actually doing it just to get rid of me, and all of a sudden they did the mitzvah, they feel amazing, and they start telling me, oh, I really needed that. What did the guy need? To shake a branch? Well, what's so exciting? What happened here? When the person's planning for months and months to do a sin, it's the animal soul. And when you give in to the animal soul, what does the animal soul say to you? Come on, you shouldn't have given in to that. You were supposed to overcome. Right? Because the animal soul is this person who's hired by the king to try to convince the prince to do bad things. So the animal soul looks at you when you give in and says, ugh, you gave in? That was so stupid. You shouldn't have given in. And that's why you feel that way when the Aveda is done. You feel like, what a waste of time. But then when you do a mitzvah, even if you weren't planning it, the godly soul is certainly happy, because that's what the godly soul wants, to do mitzvahs, to serve Hashem. And even the animal soul is happy, because the animal soul really is there to make you work harder to do mitzvahs. So when you do a mitzvah, even if you weren't planned, you always feel good about it, because the godly soul likes it, and the animal soul likes it. But when you do an Aveda, the godly soul certainly doesn't like it, and even the animal soul doesn't like it. Which is why when you're done doing a mitzvah, no matter what you were thinking before, you're happy. You know doing an Aveda, no matter how much you planned, you feel like stupid for doing it. Because even the animal soul, which is one that convinced you to do the sin, didn't really want you to do it. Following?
Yeah.
Thinking about this before you start doing the Avera is already a way to help you not do the Avera. By understanding that when you're done doing the Avera, you're going to feel silly and you're going to feel like it was a waste of time because the animal soul, who right now is trying to convince you to do it, really deep down doesn't even want you to do it. Thinking about it that way is already a help in the struggle to keep away the animal soul from being successful. Follow? And that in...
So Mashiach, what's going to happen with the animal soul?
Oh, when Mashiach comes with the animal soul, so the animal soul is going to be just in the service of the godly soul. That's all it's going to do. We're going to learn next week, tomorrow, chapter 10, we're going to learn about the tzaddik's experience and how the tzaddik deals with the struggle between the animal soul and the godly soul. And that's going to be kind of what it's going to look like when Mashiach comes. So we'll know more about that tomorrow when we learn chapter 10.
So like, are we going to eat?
Sure, we're going to be eating and drinking when Mashiach comes. But we're going to be eating and drinking only for the sake of serving Hashem. Right? So you're still going to have an animal soul, but the animal soul is going to be only in the service of Hashem. Right? So that is basically chapter 9. In short, chapter 9 is the struggle between the godly soul and the animal soul. Our body is a city. The godly soul wants to be full control. Animal soul wants full control. The godly soul wants full control because it's a part of Hashem, and all it wants to do is serve Hashem. And it wants to serve Hashem to the max it possibly can with everything it has. The animal soul, it wants what? What does it really want? The animal soul is trying to make you be selfish, and it's trying to make every single part of your body and every single thought, speech, and action you ever have to be selfish. But why is it doing that? What does it really want? It really wants you to say no. It wants you to overcome. It wants you to dig deeper and find deeper strength and say no. Just like a king who hires somebody to convince his son to do bad things, when really all the king wants is for the prince to say no and to show his strong character. Yeah? What's your question?
You know the Kohanim, back then they were. You said that if you're selfish when you overly eat, like you eat too much. The Kohanim, they had like meat and.
That eat lots of meat, the Kohanim, yeah.
Yeah, so like they weren't selfish in that way.
No, that's like eating on Shabbos, where the eating itself is a mitzvah, right?
Because it wasn't only Shabbat, right?
But still, it's a mitzvah. So the truth is that their eating, some of the times actually was really not so enjoyable. They had to eat so much meat because you have to eat it before a certain time. Some carbonot you're not allowed to leave over any extras. I can't remember exactly where, but I remember reading, I think it's in the Gemara, which says that sometimes the Kohanim would actually start getting sick because they ate so much meat. So I'm not so sure that they enjoyed it every single time. At least their animal soul enjoyed it every time. I'm sure many, many times they were eating just because the mitzvah is to eat, so they would eat. Like matzah on Pesach. At the end of the meal, you ate a full meal. Whether you like matzah or don't like matzah doesn't matter. It's a mitzvah from Hashem, you eat it, right?
But they don't go every day to they have like one day a year. It's like the Beit Mikdash. That's like one day a year, the Kohen made Beit Mikdash.
1 day a year. It was 1 week a year, right? Each Kohen had a week service. But when it came to the holidays, all Kohanim went, right?
All Kohen, how did they?
Holidays, because the holidays, all Jews are coming. So you have many, many, many korbanot to them. Okay, so that clear for chapter 9?
An average Jew can't go inside the.
Beit Mikdash? It depends how far. Certain points a Jew is allowed to go in, certain points not. There's different levels of Beit Mikdash and how far you're.
Like the entrance.
So there's the Azara you can go to, but different parts of the temple. Maybe next week after we finish Lecha Mishnah, maybe we'll do that. Okay, is that clear?
Saying like no, like the sign of